self-employment might not be for you. If we start out on a trek and know not our bearings, lost will be our destination. It's going to be a scorcher today, and I'm trying to get out here early enough to get started on this roof and finishing it up, getting it trimmed out. And utility room with a walnut deck. What that is, when I was milling that walnut log, I made all kinds of mistakes, not only in the milling of it, but in the stacking of it, and it's just a mess. I milled up walnut that was good for firewood, but it did make some deck boards for that roof there. That's not what this video is about. A friend of mine asked me, had I given any thought about giving some thoughts as to what it means or how I become or how you can become self-employed? And I said, well, no. But then after giving it some thought, I thought, why not? So here are some of my thoughts on being self-employed. And first, I'd start with the benefits. You get to set your own hours. You get to choose your clients. You get to do what you want to do. That's never a bad thing, I don't reckon, anyway. You get to earn a decent living. You have the opportunity to build a great network. And probably most importantly, one of the greatest benefits of being self-employed is you get to make time or take time for the things that are most important in life, like your family and your faith and charitable work, helping others. It offers you a life that sometimes is not as available to a person when you're working for other people who's setting your schedule. Now, there's some factors to consider that are going to determine whether or not that, self-employment's right for you. And the first factor is what I like to call the core. You see, the core of our being is really going to determine whether or not we're cut out for self-employment. When I talk about the core of our being, I guess I'm saying what's inside of us, what morals, what values. You see, at the core of all of us, there's some big things, some things that really matter. For example, the meaning of life. What's my purpose? What's your purpose in life? We need to have an understanding of where we come from on that. Does life have a meaning? Does it have a purpose? And what is that purpose for me? It's been my experience in looking around at successful people, successful entrepreneurs, successful self-employed people, that at the core of their being are morals and values that propel them into success. You might get away with it for a little while if you don't have, these good core values and morals. For example, the virtue, if you will, of honesty. You might get away being self-employed and being dishonest for a little while. You might even fake it for a year or so, or maybe two. But it won't be long and it'll catch up with you. So at the core of a person's being, if they're going to be self-employed and going to be successful at it, we've got to have a foundation of being that is bulletproof. We all have to answer the question and honestly answer the question, not BS us. We got to answer this question honestly. Can I be trusted? Am I an honest person? Am I a person of integrity? If I tell people something, can they believe what I tell them? Now, it may be sharp and it may be harsh, but is it the truth? If in the core of our being we are that kind of person, we've taken the first major step to being a successful self-employed individual. Now, secondly, is what I like to call our constitution. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Our constitution is how we're made up. It, again, just like our core, is what's on the inside. Before we get into the finances, before we get into logistics, before we get into anything else, if we're going to be self-employed, we have to examine what's on the inside. So not only our core values and core morality and that kind of thing, and our core integrity, do we have the makeup or the constitution that's required to be a self-employed kind of person? There's three simple questions that I believe we can ask ourselves to see if we're a self-employed kind of material. Ready for these? The first one's very simple. All three of them are very simple, really. Number one, do I have to be drugged and pulled and screamed at to get out of bed, or do I hit the ground running? If you're the kind of person that has to be drugged, crawls out of bed with half an eye open and you don't hit the ground running, self-employment might not be for you. There's a second consideration in our Constitution, and that is, how do I view time? Am I comfortable with wasting it, or do I try to use it wisely? Simple question, but the answer to that question has broad ramifications. Because if I'm a person who can waste time and be comfortable with it, you can almost guarantee self-employment is not for you. Number one, do I hit the ground running, or do I have to be drug out of bed? Number two, am I comfortable with wasting time? And then number three, am I frugal? Frugal with resources, frugal with money, frugal with time. You know what frugal means, don't you? Frugal means that I take care not to waste. Use resources wisely. That's sort of what frugal means in a nutshell. And if I'm the kind of person that's not frugal, self-employment is probably not cut out for you. Number one, do you have to be drug out of bed, or are you self-motivated? Do you hit the ground running? Number two, are you comfortable wasting time? If we're comfortable wasting time, probably not for us. And number three, are we frugal? And we've looked at the core of our being. Who are we? Are we a person of integrity? We've looked at our Constitution. How are we made up? But then there's also what I like to call the chip. Now, what do I mean by that? Maybe the best way to explain what the chip is to share with you a story about a friend of mine. He told me when he was in elementary school, a teacher told him, she said, "Sonny boy, as soon as you can, you need to quit school because you're never going to amount to anything." Well, that friend of mine has amounted, he's now in his second run of multi-million-dollar operations. Why? Well, I think part of it is he uses that chip. And what is that? Well, it might be a chip on his shoulder, but that chip that, here's that memory of that teacher who said, you're never going to amount to anything. You remember the song Toby Keith wrote, or I don't know if he wrote it, but he sang it. It was like this girl who rejected him. Main line of the song is, "How do you like me now? I'm singing on the radio, I'm somebody, and you never thought I'd be anybody." Well, that chip, a lot of times, is what motivates a person to be self-employed. In some instances, the chip may be a person who is just has a fear, if you will, of failure, and just drives and drives and drives because they don't want to fail, they want to succeed. It may be a person who the chip is their absolute disdain for disappointing someone. That can be an extremely strong motivating factor for some people. And for some, it's the adrenaline rush. It's, if you will, the need for speed. That's the chip in their life. They love the challenge of being able to take a service or a product and make it successful. And usually, if they're that kind of adrenaline junkie or need for rush kind of individual, they will be successful because they have that chip, that thing that's hard to define, but it's inside of them that says, I'm going to get it done. And for some, it's just because we're too stubborn, too hard-headed, too whatever you want to call it, to accept mediocrity. We don't like it done halfway. We found that, if we're going to get it done right, we just do it ourselves. Before we know it, we're self-employed and getting it done. So sort of what it comes down to is that those three things. There's the core of our being, who are we? There is our constitution, how are we? And then there's the chip, what drives us, if you will. Now this is in no way elevating a person who's cut out to be self-employed above any other person. Not all of us are made to be self-employed. In fact, God made us all different, and some of us are made to be self-employed. Some of us are made to work for a company. Some of us are made to work for others. Some of us work best in a 9-to-5. We're all different. And this is not, please do not misunderstand me. This does not in any way, shape, or form elevate one person above another. I mean, let's face it, some don't even have no desire whatsoever to be self-employed, and probably not, because it's not for everybody. My friend, I was telling him about this fellow who was talking about, starting his own business, and he looked at me, and just straight up, no hesitation, he said, it's not for everybody, and that's the truth. So here's my final suggestions when it comes to, if you're thinking about being self-employed. Number one, and probably most important, is what is at the center of our universe? What is the true north of our compass? I'm sort of the opinion, it's been my lifelong learning, that Jesus Christ needs to be the true north of our compass. Because if we start out on a trek and know not our bearings, lost will be our destination. The second final observation would be that we need to explore. If we're considering self-employment, we need to explore. Explore our aptitude, explore our interest, explore our abilities, consult with trusted advisors. So that's sort of my take on self-employment. It's early in the morning and the temperature is already way up. I hope maybe something I said here is helpful to you. And friend, I'll see you in the next one.